Have we? Are we officially starting it right now? Ready?
Ready when you are.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to just another esports podcast. Came up with the name. That's the name right there.
Sick.
Uh, Somewhat creative, but not overly creative. I like it. It gives us a lot of room to kind of go anywhere with the conversations that we have on here. And
Mostly
so
Call of
once
Duty.
again, hmm?
Mostly Call of Duty.
Yeah, mostly Call of Duty, but potentially other esports as well. And once again, you're joined by me, Nicholas Shady Bacon, and I am joined by the lovely Kevin Hubris.
That.
So, with Minnesota being out of the way, we saw quite a lot of interesting outcomes of the matches, I would say.
Jeez. Saw a lot of
Some upsets
crying.
some upsets for certain, some predicted, but I say it's still a little too early for me to change any of my power rankings for these teams simply because we only saw 2 games out of them. Obviously, maybe some teams just had really good weekends. That could be the case for the Paris Legion for sure. We'll be able to see this weekend potentially. But for this episode, we will be going over a review of the Minnesota event, talking about those matchups and how our predictions matched up to those, as well as giving our predictions for the London event.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for London for sure. I'm also excited to talk about Minnesota, but I'm not excited to talk about our predictions because, oh man.
I am somewhat excited to talk about our predictions. I felt pretty good about my predictions. I think I had about a 60% success rate in my predictions with some obvious upsets here and there.
Yeah, right. We both had London and Paris. I don't even want to talk about that yet. We'll get there. We'll get there for
Yeah,
sure.
that's all the way on Sunday. We'll start with
Whew.
Friday for now, though. With the opening matchup of the CDL, we had the Chicago Huntsmen versus the Dallas Empire, and that one ended with Chicago taking it 3-1
To the
in the
house.
series.
To the
Yes,
house. Man,
they
was that a
absolutely
fun one.
destroyed in the domination. The hard points were a little bit closer, and the S&D went handedly in Dallas's favor. So that one, I did predict it going to a game 5, and if it did go to a game 5, I thought Dallas was going to take it. And with how poorly the Chicago Huntsmen performed in Search and Destroy against Dallas, if that had gone to a game 5, that definitely could have happened. I
True.
did predict Dallas taking the domination. That was something that did not happen by any means,
Oh man, no.
with Shotzi having one of the worst performances I've ever seen in a single game of Call of Duty on the pro stage.
Yeah, yeah, that was bad. That was real bad. I'm I'm oh gosh, 0.53 KD in domination. Shotzi right there. All of them were doing terrible. Like Illy was trying to do something. There was a brief glimpse of hope as Illy ran around the map and just fried everybody he came into contact with. I think he went on like a 6 or 7 streak. But oh man, that was a pitiful performance by Dallas. And I mean, all crying jokes aside, all of the Crim Six memeing aside, Dallas really just did not come out to play this weekend. They just, I don't know what happened.
They were against potentially the two best teams at the moment in the Atlanta FaZe and the Chicago Huntsmen, so I will give them some benefit of the doubt there. But if they do not perform up to par at this London event, I think definitely we can start to look to put them down in the rankings overall. Not to say that they won't end very high towards the end of the season, but currently, I don't think that it would be a huge oversight to move them down in the standings.
Currently, yes. Overall, I'm still sticking with with my idea that, or well, I guess my belief that Dallas Empire is a top three team. Like I said, all crying jokes aside, they did not transition well over to land. They all had god awful kill deaths. Nobody pulled over a 1 point. Crim Six leading the pack at a .96. It's just bad time for everybody there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Shotzi started seeing some bench time after that weekend.
Yeah, it was definitely a really rough time for them. And I don't want to take too much away from them. I think they are definitely one of probably the upper echelon search and destroy teams.
Sure.
We only got to see them against Chicago though and Atlanta, who didn't drop a single search and destroy map the entire weekend. So it's kind of hard to actually gauge how good the Empire are. And so that's again, I think why this London event is going to be very major in kind of them being able to ground themselves in any kind of team standings.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like historic performances go, yes, Chicago didn't do very well in search. We didn't expect them to do very well in search. They're not a great search team, but they Dallas really did play one of the best search teams I've ever seen in Atlanta, but we'll get to that later. I do want to talk about some highlights from that game. For those of you that didn't watch, Scump and Formal came out and did business. You know, it was very personal for them based on everything that Crim6 was saying online, and Clayster was definitely joining in a little bit. So they came in, they got work in, it was everything you wanted in an opening match for the Call of Duty season, and hopefully that's like the best first step forward, best first blood, I should say. And I'm really excited for the rest of the season. I was definitely eagerly waiting the next match, every single match until the very end because of that
Yes.
match.
And we won't have to wait too long to potentially see a Dallas versus Chicago rematch as they are in the same group for London. Moving on to the next match that did happen on Friday after the Chicago Dallas series was Seattle Surge versus the Florida Mutineers, which I predicted to go to the Florida Mutineers in a 3-2 victory, which was the actual outcome, while you, Kevin, said that Seattle was going to win that 3-1.
Um, I know Octane showed up to play in Minnesota.
I would say all the players showed up to play. I mean, if you look at their respawn KDs, all of them are around what they should be for those players. And for kind of the role that they fill within the team. It's simply the S&D, which is absolutely atrocious, as they didn't win a single S&D the entire weekend, even though they played four of them.
Yeah, true. They got to win their searches. You're not wrong. I will say though, I definitely underestimated Florida. Florida looks absolutely ridiculous. They look really, really good. I'm pretty high on Florida right now. I know that they're 1-1 right now, but the things that I was seeing from Skies and from Pristini is actually a phenomenal leader. I'm pretty impressed with what he's done with his team, and I'm looking forward to seeing more Florida.
One of the players that actually surprised me on Florida, I think this weekend, was Frosty. He had some standout performances this week. I was very harsh on him in the prior podcast, saying that he was the most average player on the team that would really kind of bring the team down, and he showed some very standout performances in the respawns.
Yeah, I think Frosty did a great job this weekend. Like I said, I'm overall impressed with Florida. I think I judged them a little too harshly in the beginning, but Seattle, you guys need to get your stuff together. That's for the roster that you guys have, that's pretty unacceptable. I'm not too pleased with their performance. Search has got to come up. Like and the only way you do it is you just got to keep playing search, got to keep grinding search. I think what really happened was in the beginning, the Seattle roster didn't get announced, and whenever the search mania was going on in the very beginning, when everybody was trying to run UMGs and big search tournaments, Seattle wasn't ready yet. So I think they caught the hardpoint wave of scrims. They didn't quite catch the search wave of scrims, so I think they lost out on that. We'll see. I think a lot of the preparation was rushed getting into Minnesota, so hopefully they take this as a weakness and they move on. I wouldn't count them out though.
No, I wouldn't count them out either. I think they have great coaching staff behind them and Joey Nubsy. I think it will just take some time, as I said earlier in the prior podcast, for this team to really come online. I don't see them being a standout search and destroy team for probably this event or the next couple, to be honest.
True.
But if they can shore up that S&D weakness, I mean, their respawns are looking quite impressive, as they were able to take at least two out of the three. And so if they're able to win at least 50% or maybe 60% of their search and destroys, obviously they're at 0% right now, so that's a big change that would need to happen. But if that does happen, you're looking at definitely a top echelon team here in the Seattle Surge. And for the Mutineers, I think probably the game mode they'll have to work on the most is their domination. That seemed to kind of be their weakest game mode out of the three. But if they can shore that up, they'll also be looking to be a pretty dominant team potentially. It will be interesting to see them face maybe some more upper echelon teams since I didn't really have Seattle Surge being that good of a team currently. And they were able to take that over them in a 3-2, but it was still a close series. And then they did lose to the LA Gorillas in a 3-2 as well.
And that's probably the biggest thing that I'll say against Seattle was you really did not need to lose that second game. Like the Florida game, I get it. Florida's a really really good team, but LA, come on, guys. Speaking of LA,
Seattle didn't lose to LA. Florida lost to LA.
oh, that's right, Florida lost to LA.
Yep, yep. Yeah, no, Seattle lost to Toronto, but
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
that's Saturday.
That's
Let's move
Saturday.
back to
Yeah, let's
Friday.
move back to
Move back
Friday.
to Friday with the
The
highlight match of the night for the Minnesota fans, which were out in quite good force at the venue. Was the Minnesota Rocker versus the LA Gorillas, which the Minnesota Rocker took that 3-1 with a little asterisk there because of the forfeit that did occur. So you were probably hoping that that forfeit for the S&D did not happen since you had the Rocker winning 3-2, which definitely could have happened, but I had it 3-1. So I'm perfectly fine with that forfeit going over to Aches and the boys, them chalking that S&D and then losing the entire series. So
yeah, it's a
makes me look smarter.
little unfortunate, but I mean, honestly, LA is leaving this opening weekend 1-1, which was a lot more than I thought they were going to. So can't be too mad about that. Minnesota looks really good though. I think this is another team we probably should reevaluate how good they actually are in the coming weeks. You know, I was really really impressed with GodRx and Silly and Asim's performance. Like they all did pretty well. Great respawns. Hardpoint was on like basically flawless most of the weekend. Domination needs some work, but not the end of the world. Their search lacking a little bit. I know I gave credit to Silly and Asim, but Asim, you cannot be pulling a .38, buddy, in search. Like that's just it's not okay. I don't care what position you're playing.
Yeah,
Um,
but if you are doing that bad, that would probably be the game mode to do it in.
true. 6 and 16 doesn't sound as bad as a .38. It's still early in the season, but I am a lot higher on Minnesota now.
Yeah, I definitely think Minnesota seems like they'll be a very, I wouldn't say they're going to be a standout team. I think they'll stay a middle of the pack team throughout the majority of the season. I don't see them kind of breaking up into that upper echelon out like top five. I see them kind of staying more around that 6 through 10 area. And one of the reasons being is even though they played, some would say, quite well over the weekend, they still went to a game five against Toronto and they won a series against the LA Gorillas in 3-1 fashion after a forfeit. So, I mean, if you want to really look at that series, they would have been down 2-0. They could have swung it around and won it 3-2 in the end, done a reverse sweep. But even so, you look at the LA Gorillas, there is no way in the world this team should be taking hard points off of people. Yet they took a hard point off of the Gorillas, and they took a hard point off of the Mutineers as well, I believe. It was either that or a domination. I can't remember for certain. But if you look at the kill to death ratios of these players, you have Aches at a negative 50 kills overall. His hardpoint KD was a .62. The hardpoint KD of Decimate was a .74. The highest hardpoint KD was a was Lacefield at a 1.02. This team should not be winning hard points. And this was something I was worried about with Saints being the coach of Minnesota is probably one of the reasons why they lost that initial hard point. They got out coached. There's no reason a team that is this negative in the kill to death ratio should be taking respawn game modes off of these teams.
True.
And they did this multiple times throughout the weekend where they were keeping maps extremely close, even though they were getting outslayed by absurd amounts. So I think not only do the Minnesota Rocker need to take a hard look at their respawn game points, specifically their hard point, because there was a lot of times where they were going up on the initial breaks, like the first two hills, they were going up by like 100 points. And then by the end of the first rotation, they were losing by 30. That happened so many times throughout the weekend. But not only them, but so many other teams. Like there should be no the LA Gorillas should have been nowhere near to taking a single hard point this weekend. Yet they won. I, they won multiple.
Yeah. Like I said, everything that the Gorillas have done right now has been a bonus or an extra as to what I thought they would do. I really thought LA was going to come out there and just, you know, just absolutely embarrass themselves. And I think they did quite the opposite. I think they have a lot of work to do, but I think the Rocker, you're not wrong. The Rocker definitely could have lost that one, and seeing LA be up 2-0 in the first weekend would have been unreal. But it did go the way of Minnesota, and I'm pretty confident that we're both right about Minnesota being a higher tier team, but not a top team. And I think we're both wrong about LA being maybe not bottom of the barrel. They might actually be a mid tier team.
I definitely think LA Gorillas will be bottom of the barrel once teams actually learn how to play hardpoint, because there's no way if LA Gorillas keeps up their performance in hardpoint and other teams actually learn how to play the game type that they're going to be able to match the other teams.
I mean,
Because the only reason they're able to go absurdly have two of their players go absurdly negative in hardpoint is because they just have a better understanding of the game mode, which is absurd since they've probably had the least amount of practice
right?
on in the game.
Like I said, there is no reason why LA should have pulled anything out of this weekend. This should have been, whatever happens, happens, and we're not ready for it. If they had gone into their press conferences after the games and been like, we were clearly not ready for this, et cetera, et cetera, I would have respected it. I would have been like, you're not wrong. That's an adequate, or that's like an accurate assessment of where you guys are at. But they pulled a win. It wasn't against Minnesota, but it was a really close one against Minnesota. Realistically, I mean, who knows? We'll see. Ready to move on to Saturday?
Yep. So
Oh
with
man,
yeah, with Saturday we saw the London Royal Ravens go against the New York Subliners, both of which we thought the New York Subliners were going to take it 3-2. Realistically, I thought this was going to be a very close series. Unfortunately, it was not, with the London Royal Ravens taking it in a swift and very convincing 3-0 fashion over the New York Subliners.
I am officially not as high on the subliners after that performance. I would like to discount their Sunday performance against the FaZe clan because it's FaZe, but this was a very winnable match. I'm not as high on London anymore, and London they just ran them over. It wasn't even fair. It looked like New York just didn't know how to play Call of Duty anymore. Like they got their scuff controllers mixed up or something. I don't know. I can't explain why a team with attached Zuma, zero temp, and accuracy would do this terribly this weekend. It just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. You have to give it up to Wuskin for London, though. Oh my God, one of one of the best performances of the weekend. Actually, I think he had the highest KD of the whole weekend.
Yep,
Or the
at
160.
1.6.
Jeez, a 1-6 in professional Call of Duty. It's great and all that you pull a 1-6 in pubs or something like that. You know, 1.6 going up against the best in the world. Jeez. absolutely shredding everybody out there. I think New York has a lot to work on, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take them to get to where they need to be. I thought the chemistry was already going to be there with a lot of those guys. A lot of those guys have been playing with each other for a while. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a chemistry issue or kind of if they just aren't sure on how to play the game types quite yet. But when I initially saw this team, I thought Zuma was gonna be kind of the X factor. He was gonna be the one that was gonna take a while to get into the game, where that wasn't the case at all. He was the best player on that team this past weekend.
Not by much, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in some of the respawns, he was one of the only players I would remember looking at the scoreboard some of the times that was on screen, and I saw that Zuma was uh, one of the only players that was positive on his team, and he was always doing really well. Uh,
And
I
that's the
guess
thing
in
is
the
that
averages it balanced out a bit more, but
a lot of these flashy SMG players, that run around cracked out of their minds, it does seem like they're going to be doing really, really well in respawn because they can pick up those two pieces and three pieces a lot of the times. But unfortunately, you don't really see behind the scenes where, they're running to the point because they're the SMG guy and they just get fried because they don't have a chance mid range or even long range. And we're going to see that a lot more with the MP5 nerf. I know personally from playing it is very hampering to get long shots now on the MP5. So I think a lot of these SMG players that came out real strong out the gates this opening weekend will hurt. So maybe Zuma not going to do so good on New York being an MP5 player.
do you think some players will maybe switch to a different gun, or is the MP5 still kind of the best SMG that
I am
there's available?
convinced that very, very little changes in terms of MP5s and M4s. I do know that there will be times like Hackney, for example, where a lot of these teams are running 4 or 5 MP5s. That number is going to go down because of the mid-range battles. They're going to be a lot harder to win with an MP5 in your hand. But you want to go ahead and talk about Toronto and Seattle?
Yes. So we both had Seattle taking this 3-2, which I don't know. We're stupid. We both said this team was going to struggle a lot in search at the beginning of the year, yet we have them taking a game 5 in search and destroy. Like, what are we thinking?
Yeah.
Realistically, looking back at this, we both should have gotten this prediction right. We either should have said Seattle wins it 3-1 or they lose 3-2. There's no why did we say they would have taken game 5?
I just thought it was going to
Looking
be a lot
back at it, it
closer.
makes no sense.
I thought it was going to be a lot closer. I thought Toronto was. I mean, the rosters look pretty evenly matched.
I
Methods
mean,
did.
it was close. It was a 3-2. But when you think S&D and then you look at Seattle, you're just like, "Oh yeah. Why did we say they would take that search?"
Yeah, that's true. And Methods is really like a search and destroy mastermind. I mean, I'm pretty impressed with Toronto's search play. Both Classic and Methods put up huge performances, and it wasn't like everybody else was slacking. Looney did the worst with a .79 kill death. But as far as their search game goes, I think they're probably one of the better teams for search.
Yeah, and I think a .79 in search is kind of just the role that he plays for the team.
Yes, I
I
think
think
that's.
Classic had a standout performance in search and destroy, almost unbecoming of him
Oh
on
yeah,
Sunday.
he was a hero on Sunday. He was an absolute hero. The hard point does leave a lot to be desired. I wasn't thoroughly impressed with any of their hard point performances. Clearly, it was enough to get the job done, but I'm not convinced yet about their hard point, and I think that's also a very, very important game type. Search, a lot of people harp on it. A lot of the older guys in the COD world harp that Search has got to be the game mode that you win. But hardpoint, Optic Dynasty proved that. If you have a really, really good hardpoint, you can just absolutely humiliate teams. You just demoralize them, and they just start doing bad. I think that Toronto, while yes, they did really well in search, I'm really not sure how they're gonna fare throughout this season. Um,
Yeah, I'm not too sure how they're going to fare either, and it seems that they're already making a change to their starting lineup. I believe I saw that they're moving Metals down to the quote unquote B team, which is somewhat surprising, seeing as how he was outside of Methods the second best performer on their team throughout the weekend. So maybe they're just looking to have someone that's fully native English speaker on the team, outside of maybe some of that Spanish fury.
Yeah, and I thought that was always like it was in the back of my mind. I didn't want to say it, but it was always in the back of my mind that that might be an issue, and that was something that you know didn't have an issue with last year because he was on a predominantly Spanish speaking team. But I think it'll come with time. They have 5 players. Like there's no reason why Toronto can't move stuff around, and I think I think that they're gonna be fine for the season. But I still think that 10 players is way too much. They're crazy.
Yep. Well, moving on to the next series, which we talked about a bit, is that Florida versus LA Gorillas match, which the Gorillas did end up taking 3-2. I thought that Florida was going to take it 3-1. We both did, actually. So this is a bit of an upset, I would say, most definitely, especially barring Florida's a relatively strong performance that they had the day prior against Seattle.
Yeah, I really thought that Florida was gonna come out there. I thought that Florida was gonna get a little bit upset about their loss to Seattle, which they won. I thought they were going to get a little bit upset on their loss, come back and really put the hurting on the Gorillas, kind of get their footing. But I think quite the opposite happened. I think they got a little bit of steam in them. I think Pristini saw his brother Alec Arcides, win a really big game against Dallas, and then he got motivated. He took that win against Seattle, and maybe it was just a timing thing. Maybe they just played too soon or something. But it just looked like he wasn't in it. And you can never discount a guy like Eggs. You can't do it. You literally can't do it. I know,
I mean, I'm discounting him. The man was a .62 on the weekend in hardpoint.
but he doesn't bring a good hard point KD to the table. He doesn't bring this superstar search player to the table. He
What is
brings
he bringing to the table?
he brings
Look at these
this
categories.
experience, he brings communication, he brings leadership, and he brings this personality that it's kind of unique to Call of Duty. You don't really see it that often.
He
Uh,
must be bringing some damn good communication during these hard points and these dominations for this team to be picking up any sort of respawn. It is absurd. Looking at how good Florida is at some of the respawns, and then also being able to bring that over to search, which they were even better at, and then they lose this series. Like, oh my gosh! Like, Bevels and Ricky and Aches must just be freaking geniuses at this game because
I,
they're able to play the game without even they're able to win the game with barely even playing it. It seems with some of the stats that they're putting up.
yeah, like I said, I really thought that I was gonna be you know just gonna see an 0-2 in the LA slot, and they definitely came out and played. Like it's kind of inexplicable. We'll see as time goes down, and you're not wrong whenever we said that we weren't going to reevaluate power rankings at this time. Some of these games just don't make a whole lot of sense as to why
Bruh,
they
it
happen.
feels like it feels like so this is what it feels like. It feels like Aches is just playing StarCraft while everyone else is playing Call of Duty. Aches is literally just on the map with some third eye, god eye camera, top down, looking over the map. He sees all of his units. He's moving them around in fog of war or whatever, just sneaking them around the map. And then all of a sudden, the enemy team's like, "Oh man, we're destroying them," and then their like Nexus explodes or something. They're like, "Wait, we lost?" And Ace is like snickering in the background, all evil like.
I mean, you're probably not wrong. It's pretty close to that. He's been playing with these guys for forever. Like, imagine telling somebody like, "Oh yeah, Aches doesn't know what's in Karma's mind right now. Aches doesn't know what's in Crimsix's mind right now. Aches has been playing against these guys for years now. Years. there's anybody that knows how to beat the enemy, it's Aches. He's got it. He's got it in his head. He might not have it in his hands anymore, but he's got it in his head. He might not be out shooting these young kids, but there's some things you can't teach young kids, and part of it is just how to really play Call of Duty. And I think Aches is, it's the whole reason why he's still there. At what? How old is Aches now? Hold on a second. Quick Google search. Um,
I'm gonna guess 24.
he has 24. I think he's older than that, but because he was like complexity and everything. He's 25. He is 25. He looks so much older though. Like, Aches looks like an old ass dude. He looks like he's like
Evil ages
27, 8.
you.
True, evil does age you. Remember that, kids. Evil does age you. He did get his nice booze in, especially after the Florida game whenever they won, and he did the post game interview. They did
Last
get their booze
weekend
in.
was pretty much just Return of the Sith or Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. Oh man. All right, we've beaten the dead horse of LA Gorillas enough. Optic Gaming versus Paris Legion. You want to start
Yeah.
on this one?
So
Oh man.
I said I thought Optic was good enough to win 4v5. They would have been good enough maybe to win 4v5, but they were playing 3v5 because not even TJ decided to show up to play. Oh
Yeah.
boy, let's get into this. So they lost to Paris Legion 3-2. Very close series. I had OGLA taking Paris Legion 3-0. You had them taking the series 3-1. That was not the case. Paris Legion showed up and they beat Optic LA 3-2, obviously, as I said previously. But you got to look at some of these Optic performances. Like, oh, good lord! Like I knew JCap was gonna suck,
Oh yeah.
but
I
then
mean,
you got TJ that did worse than JCap
how
in a
though?
variety of the modes.
How? Um,
I guess at least Crimsix isn't there to yell at him.
I guess. I feel bad for Dashy. Honestly, like, there's one player to really feel bad.
I feel bad for Kenny and Slasher.
Yeah, I feel bad for Kenny and Slasher too. You know, the old 100 Thieves guys are definitely feeling a little bit of regrets this weekend as they joined Optic and decided to absolutely do nothing this weekend.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think TJ will stay will perform this bad at London. Is he at London? No, he's not.
no, he is not in London.
So I do think this team will make some improvements. How much they improve between now and probably Atlanta, I believe, is when they would play next. I don't know for certain. I definitely think TJ will get a lot better between now and Atlanta. I'm not too certain about JCap. Honestly, I would love to see them sub in either Chino or Goonjar, maybe both of them if TJ Halley doesn't improve his performance. Odd enough as it is to say.
I think he will improve over the year. If you remember his Black Ops 4 career, he didn't really start shining and then start becoming a consistent player until later in the season and until COD champs, as Scump will remind us. I think TJ will turn it around. I'm not worried about TJ. I am worried about Slasher and his stress levels and his blood pressure because I guarantee you this guy has been running boot camps every day since Minnesota. He's got to be
Yeah.
furious right now.
Someone better get a Pac-Man medical license because he's gonna,
Yeah, right. He's gonna have to patch some bloody noses to some kids.
bro. He's
Um,
gonna be bringing in the wee woos for Slasher.
DJ, or DJ Dashy did not put up as good of a performance as I thought he was going to. His transition from online to LAN was a little bit rougher.
I
A
mean, he
little,
didn't do bad by any means.
no, 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 no. But he's not Dashy. Like, you look at Simps numbers at a 158 KD. You look at Wuskin at a 160, Formal at a 131, Octane pulling a 114, and then you have Dashy pulling like a 106. Like, eh, it's good, I guess. It's not great. It's good. Like, I'm just not impressed with Dashy's performance this weekend. But I do think that he also was on a team that was just getting absolutely outslayed a lot of the time, and I think that that's no good for your stats either. Yeah, Optic. If you were an Optic fan, you were listening to this, I would be concerned. I would definitely be concerned. You dropped a game against Paris. While it was close, Paris was in no way, shape, form, or fashion primed to be good this weekend. If I was Paris, I probably would have taken this weekend as a different approach. But instead, they decided to just pull up a 2-0 real quick and, warm themselves by the fire of the winners as Kismet goes off, Shocks goes off, Dens just lights the whole world on fire,
Yeah.
especially in hard point. Dens just I don't know. He was just all over the map. I think there's some teleports that we don't know about because it just seemed like every time I watched Dens, he was just there in the action, frying everybody. It was great. I was very impressed with Paris. I know we talked a lot about Optic, but can we talk about Paris, please?
Yeah, I would love to talk about Paris. And I mean, I would love to talk about Paris because I think I was right with what I said their lineup would be. I can't remember who I said their fifth man was going to be, but I do remember pretty much guaranteeing that the starting lineup, with at least the starting four, was going to be Dens, who I thought they were going to build the roster around as the most consistent player from last year. And then they were going to throw in two familiar faces to him in Zed and Shocks, and then they were going to throw on Luca as the third Australian to complete the chemistry package that is this team. And I don't know. I mean, I
Can't be mad about
excuse me.
Kismet's performance.
No, you
Cannot
can't be
be
mad
mad
about
about
Kismet's
Kismet's
performance.
performance.
The one thing I want to say about this team is I don't know if this weekend was maybe just a one off. As I said prior in the prior podcast, Kismet, Zed are very inconsistent players. They have
True.
very good days and very bad days. Very good games, very bad games. Was this just a really, maybe they converted that, they upped it a bit to really good weekends? We'll find out at London.
We
Uh,
will find out at London as they do play the opener against the New York Subliners, a team who has everything to prove. So I'm excited. I'm always excited for Call of Duty, but I'm definitely excited to see Paris prove themselves against supposedly a good New York team.
yeah, and if they turn out to be a consistent team this year, all more power to them. I will love that. Get more of those spicy Kismet interviews. I will not complain a bit.
They are spicy. All right. Now we get to talk about what I believe is the match of the weekend in Atlanta, Dallas. Oh my gosh. Is Atlanta good or what? Or is Atlanta good or what? Like,
They're
yeah,
okay.
they're not
They're
bad.
okay.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Let's just take a look at their search kill deaths. Simp was pulling a 6.5.
Did they die in search? Are you sure there's just not all
Celium,
undefined?
they might have jumped off the map in celebration. Celium 5.0, Major Maniac 14.0, Priesta with a 2.5, not too shabby. And Abizi rounding up with a 7 and 7 1.0 KD. Wow. Like what?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Now, I will say this team relied heavily on slide canceling. That was something that they prided themselves on. They were hands down the best going into this weekend with slide canceling. Slide canceling is nerfed a little bit, so I don't know how well they're going to do. But the thing is that these guys, they're kids and they will just do the new thing. What's the next new degenerate thing to do? And like they're gonna find it. Simp is still gonna be playing out of his mind because it literally just ran around. Anytime you watched an Atlanta game, it was where's Simp, where's Simp, where's Simp, where's Simp. Like I said last week during the podcast, I was like, everybody during online is always asking where Simp is. Wasn't different for LAN, and they just genuinely could not stop him. Just had control of wherever he was. Pulled a 158 for the weekend. Him and Celium both just went off this weekend. The whole team was just lights out, and they really, really, really put the hurting on a an already fragile Dallas Empire. So I'm beyond impressed with Atlanta right now. They played out of their minds.
Yeah, Atlanta played very well as per most of our expectations. I did think the Dallas series was going to be a bit more competitive than it turned out to be. Maybe not so much after I did see the performance they put up against Chicago. I don't think Atlanta FaZe is unbeatable. I definitely think some of the hard points and the respawns were close or a little bit closer than one might like for how hard they were outslaying some of the teams. But their S&D looks untouchable at the moment.
I just don't know. I've never seen a search and destroy team this good. I never seen it. I can't name the last time I've seen a search and destroy team that puts up this disgusting of numbers. This isn't even fair. Imagine if kill streaks were part of this game. What do you do? I don't even know if any of them would like a BC would probably even have gone positive if there was kill streaks in this game. They just genuinely unbeatable in search. Genuinely unbeatable. Phenomenal play. They really took it to land and just mollywopped everybody, including Empire. Yeah, that was the first showing of Atlanta this weekend, and it definitely didn't disappoint.
Yep, and they're not going to be at London, so they'll have time to watch all of London and get even better from that. So, moving on to the Sunday matchup, the first one being the Paris Legion versus the London Royal Ravens.
We got this one dead wrong. Not even wrong. We got it dead wrong.
Yeah, we got this one pretty wrong. We both had the London Royal Ravens taking it 3-0 over the Paris Legion, and it was the exact opposite. We go from the London Royal Ravens 3-0ing New York in convincing fashion, and the Paris Legion 3-2ing Optic Gaming in somewhat convincing fashion to the London Royal Ravens getting mollywopped 3-0 by the Paris Legion.
Isn't that fun? Isn't
Nope.
that a fun word? That's a great word.
What?
Mollywopped.
Mollywopped?
I said it and you just
I feel
copied.
like it fits the description of the series quite
Oh
well.
gosh. I mean, aside from Weskin, I just genuinely think that everybody else just was like, you know what? Let's just let Weskin do everything, and we'll see what happens because nobody else was playing the game. It was a 1v5 the whole time. I'm when I say that, I'm not even speaking in hyperboles. It was literally a 1v5 the whole time. Paris just went out there and they played like a team, and London literally just decided that they weren't going to show up. I think this is great though for the European fan base to see a little bit of a rivalry already forming. A hard 3-0 in Paris definitely will make this very interesting for the season to come.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think London played, I would say, some incredibly slow Call of Duty against maybe both teams. I'm not entirely too sure. But when I do go to kind of their kills per 10 minutes in the hard point, their values are on much lower end than a lot of the other teams. I'm looking especially at kind of Rated and Jerd
Yeah,
in there. And
I think a lot of
Jerd, I thought was going to be kind of the one player that really needed to show what he was worth this year, as he didn't have, I wouldn't consider an impressive Black Ops 4 season last year, or an all around too impressive World War II season the year before that. And he definitely struggled in that Paris match.
struggle is a very positive term for Jordan. I wouldn't say he struggled. I'd say that whenever Jerd woke up to this morning, whether it was just like he woke up on the wrong side of the bed, he woke up and he was in Minnesota, it was really cold. Jerd just I don't even know what happened. It wasn't even like there was a pro player up there. He just ran around the map, just died a bunch. That's all I saw. I don't know what anybody else was seeing, but that's what I saw whenever I watched Jerd against Paris. It was embarrassing. I would be very embarrassed if I was Jerd. Like I said, London. Oh my gosh, what are you guys doing? You know, you pull a 3-2, or sorry, you pull a 3-0 on Friday, I guess you just gave up. You had too many beers at the pub. What happened? Or on Friday, on Saturday, very first game on Saturday. That's probably what it was. They had their very first game on Saturday. They 3-0'd New York, and then they just went out for drinks. Only explanation.
Yeah, so it'll be quite interesting to see if London can shore up maybe some slight inconsistencies there in performance, and I think having that home crowd in the Copper Box will definitely help them. And would be nice to see a Paris versus London rematch, I would say, this weekend. But moving on to our next Sunday series from Minnesota, we had OGLA versus the Chicago Huntsmen, which, not too surprisingly, went 3-0 to the Chicago Huntsmen. I predict that you gave one map to Optic. A little bit of favoritism, maybe, but
Um,
I'm
I,
not
I
gonna blame you for it.
I think that I was a lot higher on Optic as far as the search game goes. I think that Chicago still leaves a lot to be desired in search. But it looks like they just got the job done. I think the most interesting thing in this matchup was actually the post game stuff. Whenever Scum kind of opened up about everything that happened with Optic, and it is nice hearing that he doesn't really have a whole lot of hard feelings against them. He understands that it was a business decision at the end of the day, and I think that gives us a lot of gives Optic Gaming at least a little bit more or a little less of the villain kind of feel around them, and they're more just like, yeah, there's a bunch of kids. But I mean, I think they lost to a really good team. I think Optic lost to a really good team, and I think that's pretty obvious. I really do think Optic needs to come back, and they really need to reevaluate how they're gonna approach the game. I think that's the first big step. Chicago doesn't need to do anything. Chicago's fine. Chicago keeps doing exactly what they're doing, and they're gonna find themselves in the grand finals and COD champs. Team played
I
lights
definitely
out.
think they could be scrimming some S&D.
Yeah, yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's great to see
I
all
think
the
every team could be scrimming S&D. All the teams should be scrimming S&D outside of maybe Atlanta, but if they want to stay on top, they should probably be scrimming some S&D.
I
Seattle
will
definitely needs to be scrimming S&D. I think Chicago probably should as well. Uh,
I
and I
will
mean, it's
say
not even that hard to scrim S&D anymore. You got all these fabulous challenger teams over here that you're never gonna face.
true. And
And
I
if none of these teams do scrim S&D, they're most likely going to start losing Toronto, who can do S&D in houses.
Yeah, that is true. I think a lot of the S&D does happen. I think it's just a little bit more proprietary to say the least. Like nobody really wants to give away what they're doing in Search to Destroy, and I
Yeah,
think
but you can freely give it away to challenger teams.
yeah, I think that's a fair point, and I do believe that there are scrims going on for Search. I don't think you're wrong either. I think leading up into this opening weekend, we did see a lot of search in the very beginning, and then we saw a lot of hard point, and then we saw some panic as they realized, oh, Dom is going to be the third game type. That they're not kidding, and we saw like maybe a week or two of some really intense Dom boot camps. But yeah, it's about time for them to go back to search and really buckle down on it. But as far as this match goes against Optic, Chicago looked like they didn't have a weakness. It seemed like the whole team is vibing pretty well together, and I'm pretty impressed with Chicago Huntsmen right now.
I wouldn't as go far to say as they don't have a weakness. I think S&D could definitely be their weakness against certain teams, but they are definitely one of the top two teams currently.
It will be fun to see what happens whenever Atlanta and Chicago finally play in the same event. Unfortunately, going into London, Chicago will be there, Atlanta will not. So maybe opportunity for Chicago to bolster the lead, maybe an opportunity for them to lose it. Who knows?
Well, moving on to the next Sunday match, we got Atlanta FaZe versus the New York Sub. And that one went to Atlanta in 3-1 fashion. That's what I predicted. You did not predict that. You said it was going to be a 3-2 for Atlanta. Please explain.
Everything that I've already said about New York and Atlanta, essentially polar opposites right now. Atlanta's playing out of their minds, one of the best teams in Call of Duty right now. New York is playing like they don't know what Call of Duty is. They're maybe like there are some Rainbow Six pros that decided to bring over their limited knowledge of FPSs. I don't know. I don't know what happened here. I don't know what happened with New York. I'm still kind of in shock with it. But like I said, it's opening weekend. It's really hard to put a lot of stock into it. I'm still pretty high on New York, even though they really did not show up this weekend. They did
Yeah,
pull a
I'm
win.
I'm I'm still pretty high on New York too as well. Sorry to cut you off there. And I
Oh,
mean, there is a silver lining here. They did take the domination against Atlanta, although that seems, I guess, to be their weakest game type at the moment, since it is the only one they did drop over the weekend. And we know it certainly isn't search and destroy since they didn't even drop around in that. I do think there is at least something here for New York to look at and be like, okay, we took this off of probably the best team in the game currently. We'll keep on fortifying that so we can make it even stronger, and then we'll build up these other game types throughout the break. Since they are also no, they are at London this weekend, so
yep.
we'll get to see how much they've possibly been able to improve in some of those over the short 2 week.
Like I said, they have to come out against Paris ready to play. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose a lot of stock in New York. They genuinely have to come out and put a hurting on Paris. And I don't know if they're capable. Actually, I know they're capable of it. I know that this team's capable of it. This is a good team. This is a good New York team. They just need to put the extra work in.
Yep. And so I think we'll move on to the last match from Minnesota, having Minnesota themselves in it, the Minnesota Rockar versus the Toronto Ultra. Both you and I said Minnesota was going to take this 3-2, which they did end up taking it, but they took it in a 3-1 fashion over Toronto, taking all of the respawns, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and only dropping the
E
single
search.
SND, in which Classic had an outstanding performance in that
Oh my
one.
gosh.
And I believe the search went pretty deep into the rounds. I believe it was a 6-4 potentially, or something
Uh,
along
I
those lines.
I believe you were right. I believe it was a
So
6-4.
it was a relatively close search and destroy as well, even with Classic's absurdly good performance in it.
I'd I'd like to say that if they were able to pick up maybe the Dom, that Toronto could have won that. Toronto, this highlights the fact that Toronto is just not there with Hardpoint. They are a good search team. That much is obvious. Minnesota has been playing Hardpoint. They've been scrimming really hard on Hardpoint, and I knew that they were not going to drop a Hardpoint against Toronto. I thought that Minnesota was also a good search team, but Toronto, man, Toronto, they got it going on for search for sure.
Toronto was really close in the hard points. I believe the score was like two. One of them was very very close. It was like 241 to 250. I want to say, and I think that goes back to the issues that I saw with Minnesota's hard points when they were facing the LA Gorillas. They would get this massive lead after the first two hills, and then by the end of the first rotation, they would have lost it and they'd be down by a couple of points. And after that point, they had to kind of very scrappily fight for every second of hill time that they wanted. And it cost them at least one hard point in that LA Gorilla series. And it definitely could have cost them in this series as well. And I think their coach, Saints, needs to take a huge reanalysis of how hardpoint needs to be played in this game, or that, or something with the mid-match communication between the players needs to be fixed in some way. It's either one of those two things, because there's no reason that if they're slaying so well in these hard points that the games should be this close.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think the biggest thing with Hardpoint in this Call of Duty is there's so much focus on the floods, the number pushes, the trades, and that is something that we did not see that much in Black Ops 4. Black Ops 4 was so much more of a, all right, let's get spawns, let's get good mid-map control, let's try to move effectively. but you could have a guy that, went in and picked up three pieces, no problem. In Modern Warfare, you just don't see that very often. When you see it, it's unreal and it's great. But I mean, it's like hitting a grand slam in baseball. It just doesn't happen very often. It's great when it happens, but it's not something you rely on to win you the game. So I think the shift from, the Black Ops 4 mentality for Hardpoint to now is a lot different. And I think that moving effectively as a team, getting those pushes in, even when you're down, to not panic and just try to rush the point, try to contest. It's just I think that's the biggest part of hardpoint nowadays, and I think a lot of these teams are starting to realize that now, and hopefully they can make some adjustments moving forward.
Yeah, will be interesting to see kind of how that evolves throughout the season. But since we're done recapping Minnesota, it's time to move on to the predictions for London. And so the first match we have starting on that Saturday, I do believe, is the Paris Legion versus the New York Subliners. And so you're predicting New York is going to take that 3-2.
I am. I think that it's going to be a hard fought battle, but I really do think that New York is going to come out and they're going to be ready to play. And I'm not saying that what Paris did this weekend was a fluke, but I don't know if they're quite ready for the aggression that New York can really put on. And I think that that's going to be what Paris is going to be facing a lot of. I think there's going to be a lot of aggression coming out of New York.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with New York taking this series. I'm going to give it to them a 3-1. I'm going to do that simply on the very far but not too far out assumption that maybe Paris just overperformed at Minnesota and that was one of their on days. And then maybe this weekend will be an off day. Who knows? I still am not too convinced that this team has changed their past very inconsistent selves into consistent good players. And so if they do perform well at this event, then I'll be convinced. But until I see some more games out of them where they're performing at a high level, then I'm going to still give it over to New York.
Yeah, like I said, I think New York's going to have it. Dallas, Seattle. First of all, I think Dallas is beyond motivated at this point. So I have them going 3-1. I think Seattle can't be discounted. They can definitely pick up the Dom. They can pick up a surge. Dallas is going to come in there and they're fired up. They're ready to play some COD.
Yeah, I don't think Seattle will take a search. I think they'll take a hard point or a dom.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
One of those two. So I do agree with you. After reconsidering, I think yes, Dallas will probably will most definitely take the series 3-1, potentially a 3-0 if somehow Seattle does drop a ball in the response, which seemed very consistent throughout the Minnesota event. That was the one thing that they definitely had going for them was their respawns. So
Yeah, and how pitiful Dallas played in Dom. I could definitely see Seattle picking up that Dom. I just don't know what happened there. Anyway, that's behind us. We're now talking about London. Chicago, LA Gorillas. I've got them going 3-1 in Chicago's favor. I think LA picks up a search and destroy because I think that Aches just knows how Scump and Form will work. And but I mean, you can't beat these guys in the respawn. They play too close together. They play too fluidly. They're working on new ways to communicate with each other, and it's an exciting time for Call of Duty, especially in Chicago's.
it'll be
Uh,
very interesting to see if LA is able to continue with their extremely negative overall kill to death ratios and hard point and still pick up wins against Chicago Huntsmen. I do think if Chicago drops a game, it will be in the search and destroy. LA Gorillas looked quite strong in their search and destroy all throughout the Minnesota event. The only one game mode that Chicago did drop, Barrett to Dallas, should be interesting to see how that will go. But I do have Chicago taking the series 3-1 as well.
Which leaves us with London and Toronto. I've got them going 2-3. I think Toronto is just gonna outperform London in the searches. I think that it's not hard to pick up one respawn out of the three after that. So I think it's gonna be a close matchup. I think that it could go either way. I did change as we were talking about Paris, New York, from 3-2 London to 3-2 Toronto. So, but you have made it a little bit more decided in your prediction.
Yes, so I have London taking it 3-1 over Toronto. I think London is a stronger respawn team, and I think they're a stronger S&D team. I'm very high on the European boys, especially with the home crowd. I do think they can take the series over Toronto. Toronto didn't impress me too much in any of their game types, barring some excellent performances from one or maybe two individuals in certain games. I think they looked to be an all around average team, whereas the London boys seem to be potentially a very hot and cold team. And with the London crowd there, I think they'll be on their A game and they'll be able to give a lovely little overseas welcome to those Toronto Ultra.
Yeah, I think I did discount the fact that it is home field advantage for London. This is new for Call of Duty, you know. Usually home field advantage belongs to Optic anywhere you go, but now Optic's not here and this is over in London and we have a London team. So that's definitely an interesting prediction. I'm gonna stick with mine, but I think you're not wrong with the home field advantage being a factor. Which brings us into so the formatting for this one's a little bit different. So it will be the losers playing the next two Saturday games from the group brackets. So there's Group A and B. The Paris, New York, and London and Toronto are Group B. Dallas, Seattle, and Chicago and LA are Group A. So for Group A losers bracket, we had. Do we have any discrepancies in that? What we have? So we had Dallas and Seattle and Chicago and LA. So that would be Seattle and LA going against each other.
Yes.
Um, I've got hmm, I've got Seattle going 3-1 over LA.
Really? That's quite interesting. I actually, hmm, this is actually a pretty tough one.
Right?
It should be interesting. I definitely think LA will take the S&D
Yep.
without a doubt. There's not a doubt in my mind that LA will take that S&D over Seattle. The respawns though should be pretty interesting because I feel that the older players on this team should probably be able to counteract the way Ace is playing the hard point. I feel there's probably some old guy shenanigans that he's doing with there that's screwing up all these younger players. Because if you look at the teams that they did play in the hard points and the respawns, it was a bunch of relatively young players on the rosters. I mean, it was Minnesota and Florida. All those lineups have pretty young players compared to the old guys on Seattle. So I think I'll I'm gonna give it to LA. I'm gonna give it to LA 3-2. I think it's gonna be the same story as Minnesota. Seattle's gonna get two respawns. The other team's gonna sneak out one of them, and then they're just gonna take both of the S&Ds. That's I'm gonna have
Wow.
LA taking it 3-2.
3-2. I think that's an adequate assessment too. Seattle's in no shape to win search and destroys, and I think that was pretty obvious with their performance in Minnesota. 3-2 is pretty good. So here's where our brackets start to differ in Group B. So I have Paris and London losing the initial games, so they'll be going up against each other in a losers bracket for Group B. I have London taking Paris 3-1. I think that home crowd is definitely going to play a favor here. I think that the whole England-France rivalry, that's kind of a big rivalry, about 1,000 years old. I think there's a lot that's going into it. I will say that Paris is a great team from what I've seen so far, but it's also really early in the season, and I was a lot higher on London, so I'm not going to discount London yet. I think London's going to take it 3-1.
Okay. Yeah, so mine I have Paris versus Toronto, and I think Paris will take that 3-1. I do think after maybe it's a team. They're either flip or flop, flip or flop. That's why I'm looking at them right now, and I think when they face Toronto, they're going to be a little more flip. I think that Kismet and Zed and the rest of the players are going to heat up after their loss to New York, and they're going to really turn it on for the Toronto series. They're also a European team, so maybe some of the crowd will get behind them there to root for them. But I think they'll end up taking that series 3-1. I really did like what the consistency that I saw from Dens throughout the entire weekend, and I think if the team can band around him, that they'll be a very strong force throughout the season.
Yeah, I think if Toronto comes out or Toronto loses to London and Toronto plays Paris in that losers bracket, I could definitely see Paris coming out 3-1. I think that's pretty accurate. All right, so we move on to our winners bracket for Group A with Dallas and Chicago rematch. I have them going 3-2. I think this is going to be a lot closer of a map. I think that Dallas is going to come out. They're going to be a lot more prepared, but I do think that Chicago is going to stick it to them in the final game. People are going to clutch up when it matters most, and I by no means is this going to be a knockdown. I think it's going to be a knockdown drag out fight. I think it's going to go to a round 11 in both searches. I think it's going to be, you know, both teams are going to come down to the wire and hard point. Domination is going to be. I'm not sure if it's going to be that much different. I think Chicago is a far better dom team than Dallas, but I will say that Dallas is going to put up a fight. Crim Six is not happy with how with how Minnesota ended, so I'm sure that he's gonna come out with a fire.
I'm gonna have this 3-1 for Chicago. And the reason being is if this goes a game five, I don't see Chicago taking that game five S&D. So I think the pressure is going to be on Chicago to really close out this series in 4 games, or yeah, in 4 games. And so they're really going to be pushing in those respawns to close out the series. And I honestly don't think Dallas probably has had enough time to maybe fix some of the mistakes that they saw in those hard points and the domination from their match against Chicago the prior week.
Yep, I could definitely see it going to a game four, and I really think that the fans want the game five. They want the round 11. They want that search match 1v1.
I mean,
You know,
I want it too. I'm a fan too. I would love to see a game five, round 11, but if it does go there, I do think Dallas will take it. I think the what we saw from them on Friday in their S&D against Chicago showed that they were the superior S&D team by a reasonable margin, not one that you'd be able to look at and say Chicago's going to take 50% of the S&Ds against Dallas. It's more so Chicago will take 40% of the S&Ds against Dallas. And
yeah.
I think in this series, if it goes to game five, would take both of the searches.
All right. All right, so we move on to the other winners bracket. I am different because I picked Toronto to win over London, where you picked London to win over Toronto. I'm gonna say New York takes it to the house, sweeps up Toronto, easy 3-0. I think Toronto is they just don't bring that aggression to the table, and I think with how aggressive FaZe plays, New York will try to emulate that and just clean up this weekend.
Yeah, no, it should. We'll hopefully see some good things out of New York. I have London versus New York in my Group B winners, and I have London taking a 3-1 over New York. They destroyed them once. I think they'll destroy them again. I think New York will be able to improve maybe a little bit since Minnesota, but I think that will only really net them one more map, and I think they'll be dropped back down into losers where they'll end up having to face Paris.
All right. For these last two, I am not sure where we go from here. So I believe that everybody who has 2 wins is already guaranteed a spot in the semis. So I believe that it's only the teams that need to fight for that last win will be playing in these last 2 rounds.
Yes, so it'd be the loser from uh, what
The
we
winners
have to.
bracket and then the winner from the losers bracket, right?
Yes, so the loser of your Chicago Dallas match versus the winner of your Seattle LA Gorillas match.
So mine would be Seattle, Dallas, and then I'm gonna go ahead and say that Dallas is pretty mad about losing to Chicago. They're gonna take it 3-0. Plain and simple. Get their spot back into the semis.
Yep. So for mine, I would have the LA Gorillas versus Dallas, and I think Dallas will take that 3-0. I don't think Crimsix is gonna fall to old man Aches and his Sithy ways, and I think we'll see Hook Skywalker defeat the Empire once again. Oh
You
wait, they
going?
are the Empire.
They are
So
the Empire.
Aches literally doesn't even have this Star Wars reference going for him. So it's already game over there.
It's already game over. 3-0 Dallas. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Chicago and Dallas in the grand finals. So brings us on to the last of the two, which would be Toronto for me, and I believe it's Paris for me as well. Oh no, Paris lost twice. Gosh, this is so confusing. London.
Yeah, so I
So
can talk about mine while you're getting
yeah, no,
yours
absolutely.
sorted up. But mine would be New York versus Paris, a rematch from the day one, and I think it goes the opposite direction of 3-1 for Paris over New York this time in the rematch. Uh, Paris, they're an inconsistent team, but maybe they're also one that builds off of wins and of emotion. And I think after coming out of the losers bracket and defeating Toronto in 3-1 fashion, some of the fire will start to build within their bellies and it will burst onto the stage in their match against New York, and they'll take the series 3-1 with Kismet and Zed slaying throughout the land.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. Paris is still a really really good team, and I think that they can match New York in their aggression for sure. In mine, I have Toronto, London. London's the home team. I'm definitely gonna give it to them 3-1. It just I feel like Toronto might take the search here, but even then, I really think that it's gonna be an inconsistent match for London on one of the three, and then they're just gonna sweep after that. So I believe that's our C. So I have Chicago, New York, Dallas, and London in mine. So I believe mine would be Chicago and London and New York and Dallas in the semis because I would imagine that they would be split like that. My
Yes.
yes.
Yep. And then mine is Chicago versus Paris and London versus Dallas. Uh, so a little bit different. And I think that's very lucky for London, potentially, maybe. Uh, kind of hard, kind of hard to tell since Dallas could potentially also be a really good team. We don't really know yet since they kind of got bodied in Minnesota, but
They
should be
did.
pretty interesting to see in London. Uh, but for my Chicago Paris match, I'm definitely going to give that to Chicago. I think they'll take that series. I think they'll take the series 3-1 against certain players. It's kind of interesting when you get to these consistent and these players that when they turn online, such as Kismet did and Zed did, and kind of the whole Paris roster, to be honest, at Minnesota, there's simply like certain players that counteract that, and I feel as though there's a lot of those on the Chicago Huntsmen. When you look at Scump and you look at Formal, they're kind of those players. I feel that whenever there's players that kind of turn online, they're the counter to it.
Oh,
They're
I
like
I
they're
definitely think
they're
they have a
they're kind
clutch
of
factor.
they're like the kid that's just unplugging the LAN cable or something from their console. I don't
Right.
know.
I think that there's a certain clutch factor that comes with the T2P crew, and I think that in my semis, Chicago and London, Chicago also takes it in a 3-1 fashion. This Chicago team is a phenomenal team. The duos of Formal and Scump and Arcides and Gunless, coupled with the young gun Envoy. Gosh, great team, phenomenal team. I'm pretty impressed with everything that I've seen so far with them. I am excited to see them in the grand finals. You want to go ahead and say who you have in the other semifinals?
Yeah, so for my other semifinals match, London versus Dallas, I have London taking it 3-2. I think the late night London boys gonna get rowdy. Gonna see the boy Wuskins turn online again, just complete beast mode of a man. Gonna see the rest of the roster
He
maybe
really
pick
is.
it up as well. Maybe Jared gets some Guinnesses into him, pulls out, just becomes the Conor McGregor of COD, and just absolutely destroys Dallas's submachine gun players. But it's like a dream scenario for me. I want it to happen, so I believe it's going to happen. London 3-2 over Dallas, and we'll see a lovely Chicago Huntsman versus London Royal Ravens grand finals.
See, for my semifinals, I had New York and Dallas, and I see Dallas just running over New York. I see Dallas running over
Yeah, I mean,
everybody.
I if I saw Dallas versus New York, I would also say that. But
Once they get that taste of victory, and once they start getting that confidence back, and the fire starts getting fueled, they're gonna go into this grand final, Chicago Dallas, and sparks are gonna fly. So you want to go ahead and say your prediction for Chicago London grand finals?
yeah, so I have Chicago beating London 3-2, sadly, in the finals. I know the London fans would love to have a London team winning, but I just don't see it happening with how good Chicago is at the moment. But at least I did predict them a London team, a European team in the finals, unlike you over there with your Chicago versus Dallas
Chicago
finals.
Dallas, Chicago Dallas, and Dallas is gonna keep running the train, and they're gonna go 3-2 against Chicago. They're gonna pick up both searches, and they're gonna pick up one of the hard points.
Third
Chicago's gonna
time's the charm. Third
third,
time's the charm.
third time's a charm for sure. I mean, I think that at this point in my predicted bracket, this would be the third time that Dallas plays Chicago, and I think that they're going to get a little bit better every time. They're going to get a little more confident every time. I do think that Chicago is the better team right now, but you definitely can't count out Dallas. They are so good. Hopefully, Shotzi decides that he wants to play Call of Duty again instead of whatever he was doing in Minnesota. But I mean, Crimsix and Clayster, they're two names that will are storied in Call of Duty, and they will always be a competitor. Can't ever count them out as long as they're playing.
Yeah, and I mean, if they play Chicago, this will if they to end up playing Chicago 3 times and they lose all 3 times, they need to really look at themselves and kind of reevaluate what they're doing as a team with kind of the players that they have,
Crimsix,
especially if they end up losing to some of the other teams here this weekend.
Crimsix, if that happens, he will never have the monkey come off his back um, against Chicago. If this is the finals and Chicago ends up beating Dallas for a third time, I just I don't see how Crimsix is going to come back from that. Like, what does that do to an ego? Especially an ego like Crimsix. You know,
Just drop the ego and focus on yourself and your team.
Right? You'd think so, but I mean, with that interview he had after Minnesota, I just don't know if that's gonna be possible.
Bruh needs to learn to chill sometimes, man. Like not as chill as Scump, Dashy, and Tej were last year, but like mild levels of chill.
Yeah. I thought that Dallas going into the season was gonna be a lot less chill. I think Clay and Krem both complement each other pretty well because they have a really strong work ethic, but I'm pretty happy with this so far. I'm excited to see all the action happening this weekend in London, bright and early, 6 in the morning for us Americans. Even earlier if you're West Coast, might as well just stay up for it. See, yeah, early games for sure. Probably will be a not as watched event as Minnesota, but I will definitely be watching every minute of it.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a lot of spectators at this event, and I think it'll definitely the fan experience will definitely be crazy. Not to say that the Minnesota fan experience wasn't crazy, but I know at these European events, the fans are usually a lot more energetic and a lot more drunken, which usually leads to a better experience for everyone. Until I haven't heard of anyone getting punched in the face in a mean way, so let's hope that doesn't
We'll
happen.
see.
But
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see. But anyways, thanks everyone for listening to just another esports podcast. We hope you all enjoy your weekend and enjoy the London event, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Later. Wow, we did terrible for predictions.
I did amazing. I don't know what the hell you're talking about.